So it's looking like it's going to be kind of a bit of a high time for Drake. Last week, of course, we discussed the Corsair, and then, of course, this pops up. This isn't a community model, though there have been some beautiful ones out there. But this is the real deal from CIG. It is happening, and it looks amazing. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. We've talked it to death. We're not going to beat that dead horse again. But there are a lot of good things right now that are happening for Drake. Recently there was a bit of a bad thing. If you own a Caterpillar, you know what I'm talking about. Since the release of 3.16, you haven't been able to fly your Caterpillar. Well, good news. They fixed the elevator. But we're going to come back to this particular problem. As ships age in Star Citizen, with each new version, little bugs appear. Now, things like this, generally CIG is right on top of, because they know that the Caterpillar is a popular ship, and for good reason. And even though the C2, which I technically have as a loaner, I believe right now, is a much larger and therefore probably a much more efficient and more profitable cargo runner, I still prefer my old Caterpillar. I love this ship. But it's not the only Drake ship that we're going to be talking about. In fact, a lot of our focus is actually going to be on a Drake ship that currently I don't own. I'm talking, of course, about the Vulture. Now, in the past, CIG has given us very brief glimpses at the Vulture, but here is the Vulture as it's kind of rounding that last turn. And it looks amazing. Looking at these images and things like that, of course, we made a joke about it when it was first unveiled to us. I called it a combine harvester because that's technically what it looks like on the outside. And I had a lot of fun with that. But it is a great ship. It solidly adds to that Drake line, that Drake list of assets. It bodes well for the future of the Corsair as well, but also for the future, fingers crossed, toes crossed, of Salvage. Now, I said before that this is a ship that I don't currently own. And in fact, truth be told, I have never owned a Vulture, though I am a fan of the ship. And I have said in the past, and I'm going to reiterate it now, is that I feel that Salvage in particular is going to see a bit of a boom time in the very beginning, much the same way the Prospector and Mining did when they first came into the game. For my main character, I've always kind of said that I'm going to stick with the Reclaimer. And I've never wavered on that. I love my Reclaimer. But the Vulture, my alt account might pick that up at the next anniversary sale, which, well, I jokingly call it the anniversary sale, but we technically have two anniversary sales. One is Fleet Week, and of course, there is the actual anniversary sale. But I might stick my alt into a Vulture just to try that out when Salvage shows up. But you might be thinking, well, Minion, you own a Reclaimer, so why would you need a Vulture to test Salvage? And this comes all the way back to what the remark I made about the Caterpillar earlier. As older ships go along in Star Citizen, they have errors and they have problems. Now, usually CIG is quick to kind of pick up on these things and fix them, but a lot of that also has to do with how popular a ship is. That's kind of why in the past I've said that it's a good thing that the Mercury Star Runner came out, because that means that data running and things like that will become more of a priority with CIG, because it was never a priority with CIG. The Herald fell behind, and it was likely not going to stay a priority for a long time. Similarly, I think that what is going to happen, apart from Salvage being initially pretty damn good content and probably pretty, profitable. I think that CIG is going to pull back the Reclaimer and probably not put in Salvage for the Reclaimer in its initial state. I think we're going to get Hand Tool Salvage and Vulture Salvage in the very beginning. The reason being is that the errors that have compounded on the Reclaimer have been largely left unfixed. The rear elevator is next to useless. The main elevator to the cockpit doesn't kill you anymore, but it needs a lot of work. Throughout the ship, there are a lot of things that need a lot of work. And there are some lingering issues that we have to talk about with the Reclaimer that, unfortunately, when you bring these things up, there's always this group within the Star Citizen community that likes to jump on this point and say that, no, that's not true. The CIG never said that about the Reclaimer. You're lying, blah, 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 blah. You're just trying to stir shit up. So every time we talk about this, I have to show this footage so that people go like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, okay, fine. It is true. So this is the concept sale page of the Aegis Reclaimer, September 26, 2014. You probably have seen this. It's the usual write-up by Ben Lesnick, yada, yada, yada. Oh, it does this. Oh, it does that. Look at this. Additionally, it includes a manned cutter, which may be deployed for EVA and recovery operations. We intend the game's salvage mechanic to include search and recovery function, which players will exit the spacecraft in suits, maneuvering to explore wreckage. Pocket spacecraft, like the cutter, will carry tools and supplies, transport recovered artifacts back aboard the ship. There was supposed to be a secondary ship attached to the Reclaimer. That was somehow forgotten. And then when players raised the issue with CIG said absolutely nothing. And certain members of the community just kind of said, oh, no, that was, they never said that. They never said that. No. That's, it was changed to the drones. No, it was a manned spacecraft and the drones were also part of it. Like, these are two separate things that are attached to this ship. It's like, oh, well, no. This is supposed to be something that's on the Reclaimer. This, compounded with all the problems, CIG is probably going to take a chance in the future to revisit the Reclaimer, polish things up, because the Reclaimer does make an appearance in Squadron 42 as far as we've seen. We witnessed it in Vertical Slice. And that's probably the reason why we got the Reclaimer in the first place, because Salvage was never done, but they finished the Reclaimer because they needed it for the game. And chances are, as ships are getting finished for Squadron 42, the Reclaimer is going to go through this, and they're probably they're going to take the usual CIG line, which is, well, we could fix this, but we're just going to make a whole new UI anyway, so why bother? Chances are they're probably going to look at the Reclaimer and say, hey, there's so many problems with this ship. We're going to hold off. Once we take it up to the quote-unquote gold standard, that's when we're going to fix a lot of these things. And so it's important to bring light to things like the cutter and just say, yeah, there's some other things that were forgotten that need to be fixed. Now, some people say, well, why make a big deal of it? Imagine if in the latest iteration of the Constellation, we just took out the snub fighters. We just said, no. Everything else is there, but we just took out the snub fighters. What would happen if you took the Carrack and then you just said, the modularity in the cargo bay? Kind of a hassle. Let's get rid of it. Or the modularity of the cargo bays on the Caterpillar. So it's very funny to see some people kind of dismiss these things. But then if you kind of follow their track through the CIG forums, you'll notice that often on Spectrum, they're complaining about their own ships not getting, the attention they deserve. So it's like, yeah, your ships who cares? Let's worry about my ship. So, yeah, that's something else that CIG has to fix. Now, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen this week's episode of Boba Fett, you might want to stop here. Those of you that have know what I'm going to talk about. We saw the triumphant return of the Naboo N1 starfighter being rebuilt and powered up to serve as, the Mandalorian's personal starfighter as he's making up for his loss of the Razor Crest in the Mandalorian series. And I have to say that when I saw this ship and I saw what they did with it, I really, really digged it. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about Drake ships is when you look at something like Star Wars, ignoring, the movies that aren't so great or the episodes of television that aren't so exciting, ships that come from Drake tend to be something that you would be more likely to see in the Star Wars universe. The Reclaimer to a certain extent as well. There are other ships that are standouts, but so many of the ships in Star Citizen look overly polished, whereas ships like Drake, they look much more like they actually come from a universe and not from a showroom, And when I was watching this, I was like, that'd be a good idea for a Drake snub fighter, I mean, if you're not opposed to borrowing designs, one more time, I wouldn't mind it. Little snub fighter for the Corsair, but things are looking up. Things are looking very interesting with Drake. I'm very much thinking about picking up a Vulture. So, yeah, a Vulture, to me, it seems like a good idea because I just don't feel that the Reclaimer is going to have Salvage when Salvage is first released. I think it's going to be hand tools and Vulture only. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if the very basic implementation is hand tools only. That would not surprise me at all. But, yeah, the future is looking interesting for Drake. A lot of their ships tend to move very quickly, which kind of puts a big question mark on the Vulture. I'd really love to be a fly on a wall to hear what CIG is thinking about the Vulture. I'd also like to see the statistics within the community regarding ownership, because I would almost feel that has been a very popular capital ship. It's going to be interesting next few quarters.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.